The moment the intercom announced Code Gray, the nurses stopped what they were doing and ran. Not towards it. Away. I was visiting my grandfather on the cardiac ward. It was getting late, past 9 p.m., and visiting hours had been over for a while, but a kind nurse let me stay just a little longer. The floor was quiet, just the beeping of his monitor and the distant sound of a rolling cart. Then the intercom crackled. A calm, but firm female voice said, "Code Gray, West Wing. All secure." The effect was instant. I heard a door slam down the hall. Then another. My grandfather's nurse, Sarah, poked her head in. Her face was pale. "I need you to stay in this room," she said. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone." Before I could ask why, she was gone, pulling the door shut. I heard the click of the lock. My heart was thumping in my ears. I looked at my grandfather, who was sleeping fitfully. What was a code gray? A fire? A gas leak? I crept to the door and put my ear against the cool wood. I could hear running footsteps, not frantic, but purposeful, moving away from us. Then I heard something else. A different set of footsteps. Slower, heavier, dragging slightly. They stopped right outside our door. I held my breath. I could see the shadow of 2 feet under the narrow gap at the bottom of the door. They just stood there. I didn't dare move. I heard a low, wet sniffing sound, like an animal trying to catch a scent. Then, a single, slow scratch. One long drag of a fingernail down the other side of the door. My grandfather's monitor beeped loudly, and the feet shifted. The shadow moved away, the dragging footsteps continuing down the hall. I stayed frozen at the door for what felt like an hour, until I heard Sarah's voice whispering my name. I unlocked the door. Sarah stood there, her face ashen with exhaustion. "Is it over?" I whispered. She gave a single, weary nod. "They got him." What was it? A fire? A gas leak? Code Gray, she said, her voice hollow. Violent or disruptive person. The air went out of me. I thought of the dragging footsteps, the sniffing at the door. He was right here. Sarah followed my gaze to the floor, to the space under the door. Her expression tightened. They found him in a supply closet. He wasn't trying to get out. She met my eyes, and a fresh chill crawled down my spine. He told security he was looking for someone. A patient. A man with a bad heart. The rule was simple. No matter what you hear, do not enter room 314 after lockdown. I broke the rule when I heard a child crying inside. I worked as a CNA on the pediatric floor. We had one patient, a little boy in 314, who was terminally ill and highly contagious. The protocol was strict. During a lockdown, his room was to be sealed. No exceptions. The night the power went out in a summer storm, the backup generators kicked on, casting the hallways in an eerie red glow. The lockdown alarm sounded, a standard procedure for a power failure. We secured the patients, and I started my checks. That's when I heard it. A soft, whimpering cry coming from behind the door of 314. My heart broke. The poor kid was scared, alone in the dark. I knew the rules, but I couldn't just leave him. I reasoned that with his door sealed, the contagion risk was low. I typed the override code into the panel beside his door. The light turned green, and I heard the lock disengage. I pushed the heavy door open slowly. "Hey, sweetie," I whispered into the dark room. "It's okay." The crying stopped instantly. The only light came from the storm flashing outside the window, illuminating the room in brief, stark bursts. I could see the shape of the bed. It was empty. The sheets were tangled, but no one was there. A small, cold hand slipped into mine from the darkness. I nearly screamed. I looked down. In a flash of lightning, I saw a little boy, but it wasn't my patient. This boy was pale, his skin almost gray, and he was soaking wet, like he'd just walked through the rain. He looked up at me, his eyes wide and black. "I'm scared of the dark," he whispered, his voice sounding hollow, like it was coming from the bottom of a well. I was frozen in terror. I pulled my hand away and stumbled back into the hallway, slamming the door shut. I leaned against it, gasping, as the lockdown alarm suddenly cut off. The main power came back on, the bright fluorescent lights making me blink. The head nurse came running down the hall. "Are you okay? We lost contact with you for a second." I just pointed a trembling finger at the door to 314. She looked at the door, then back at me, her face filled with a deep, knowing pity. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "You didn't go in, did you? Room 314 has been empty for weeks. The little boy who was in there, he drowned in a lake behind his house. We couldn't save him. I was the only security guard on duty the night the maternity ward went into lockdown. The problem was, the system said the lockdown was initiated from inside the nursery. It was my third week on the job. St. Jude's Hospital, the old wing. My patrol route took me through the maternity ward, which was scheduled to be renovated. It was completely empty. No patients, no staff. Just rows of dark, silent rooms. Around 2 a.m., as I was doing my rounds, a loud, piercing alarm blared through the ward, followed by the heavy thunk of all the magnetic locks on the fire doors engaging. A lockdown. My radio crackled. Base to Charlie, we see the maternity lockdown. What's your status? I told them I was fine, just spooked. Dispatch came back, her voice confused. Charlie, the alert is coming from the neonatal nursery. Are you sure you're alone up there? A cold chill shot down my spine. The nursery was the most secure room on the floor, with its own separate locking system. I drew my flashlight and moved down the hall, the beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The doors to the nursery were made of thick, reinforced glass. I shined my light inside. The small, clear bassinets were all empty, just as they should have been. I was about to radio in an all clear when I saw it. In the far corner, one of the rocking chairs was moving. Slowly, back and forth. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking. The lockdown meant I had to manually override the nursery door. I finally got it open, the silence of the ward now feeling heavy and watchful. The air in the nursery was cold, much colder than the hallway. I walked over to the rocking chair. It was still moving, as if someone had just gotten up. And on the seat cushion was a single, fresh, yellow pacifier. As I stared at it, my radio squawked, making me jump. It was dispatch. Charlie, we've got a problem. The system just registered a door propped open. I asked which one, dreading the answer. Her voice was a whisper. The morgue. In the basement. The door from the morgue to the service elevator. It's open. I was the overnight pharmacy tech. During a lockdown, my job was to stay put and wait for security. I waited for 6 hours. Security never came. The pharmacy was a fortress. A single, buzzer-operated door, no windows, and walls lined with drugs. When the lockdown alarm blared, I did what I was trained to do. I locked the pharmacy door from the inside, shut off the lights, and hid behind the main counter. I called security on the internal phone. No answer. I tried my cell. No service. The silence was absolute. That's when I heard the first sound. A soft, rhythmic tap, 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 like a metal spoon gently tapping on glass. It was coming from the IV preparation room in the back. My blood went cold. I was definitely alone. I'd checked the entire space before locking up. I grabbed a heavy bottle of saline solution, holding it like a club. I peered around the corner into the prep room. It was dark, but the glow from a biological waste bin cast a faint green light. And I saw him. A tall, thin man in a stained white lab coat, his back to me. He was standing at the sterile workstation, meticulously arranging syringes on a metal tray. Tap, tap, tap. He was humming a tuneless, off-key melody. I must have made a sound, because his humming stopped. He didn't turn around. He just spoke, his voice dry and raspy. The dosage is incorrect, he said. It's always incorrect. They don't understand the balance. He picked up one of the syringes, holding it up to the faint green light. It was filled with a dark, murky fluid. But you and we can fix it. He slowly began to turn. I didn't wait to see his face. I scrambled back to the main door, my fumbling hands desperately trying to disable the lockdown override. The system beeped, and the door unlocked with a hiss. I burst out into the bright hallway, screaming for help. 2 security guards came running around the corner. I was sobbing, pointing back at the pharmacy. There's a man in there. In the back. The guards exchanged a worried glance. The older one put a hand on my shoulder. Ma'am, he said gently. That's impossible. The night chemist, Dr. Albright. He hasn't worked here in 10 years. He died in that very room, from a self-administered overdose. We found him surrounded by his incorrect formulas. I got trapped in the hospital basement during a lockdown drill. The security guard on the radio told me to hide. He said, "It thinks we're playing a game." I was an intern, my first week. My boss sent me to the medical records archive in the basement to fetch an old file. The basement was a maze of pipes, flickering lights, and endless shelves of patient records. I was deep in the stacks when a voice came over the PA system. "This is a drill. Lockdown initiated. This is a drill." The lights shut off, plunging me into near-total darkness, save for the dim red emergency strips on the floor. I wasn't scared. It was just a drill. I pulled out my radio to call it in. "Base, this is intern in basement archives. I'm stuck down here." The voice that came back was strained, hushed. "Intern, listen carefully. Get off the main aisle. Hide. Now." That's when I heard it. A fast, slapping sound on the concrete. Footsteps. Someone was running. But the gate was wrong. It was too fast, too frantic, and there was a weird, skittering quality to it, like multiple feet. I ducked between two tall shelves, my heart hammering. The running stopped right at the entrance to my aisle. I could hear heavy, panting breaths. The radio in my hand crackled at the lowest volume. The security guard whispered, "Don't move. Don't breathe. It's listening." I pressed myself against the cold cardboard boxes, trying to become invisible. The thing at the end of the aisle took a slow, deliberate step into the aisle. Then another. I could see its shadow stretching down the floor, long and distorted. It was getting closer. I squeezed my eyes shut. The panting was right next to my ear. It smelled like antiseptic and old meat. I felt a cold puff of air on my neck. The radio whispered one last time. "The drill ended 20 minutes ago. We can't find the source of the lockdown. We can't get the doors open." The creature behind me let out a wet, gurgling laugh. In a hospital, a lockdown is meant to be a procedure, a plan to keep everyone safe. But within those sterile walls, sometimes the protocol fails, and you're left with the terrifying realization that you're not just locked in, you're trapped.